Hey, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into the arguments from a book called Broken Money, and it makes a really provocative claim that the money in your bank, the cash you earn and spend every day, is fundamentally, well, broken. It all kicks off with one simple, powerful realization. And this is it, right here. The whole journey of the book, it doesn't start with some big sales pitch for Bitcoin. Nope. It starts by diagnosing a problem with the system we all use, a problem most of us probably never even knew we had. And that completely flips the conversation on its head, and it all boils down to one central question. And here it is. Who actually controls the money? Seriously, who gets to make it? Who can tell you that you can't use it? And who profits from all that power? The book argues that the answer to that question is where all the cracks in our financial system start to show.
So let's get into it. The first part of the book's case is all about why our money is broken. And to really get our heads around their argument, we have to start with this one kind of obscure sounding word that turns out is the ultimate source of financial power for governments.
That word is seigniorage. And put simply, it's just the profit made from creating money. You know, if it costs, say, 10 cents to print a $100 bill, that $99.90 of difference is pure profit. But in our digital world, where new money is just typing a number into a computer, the cost to create it is basically zero. This power, the power to create value from literally nothing, is the key, the book says, to controlling the whole system. And this power to print money whenever you want has a very direct consequence: inflation. And as the famous economist John Maynard Keynes pointed out, this isn't just some boring economic side effect. It's a tool that lets governments confiscate, secretly and unobserved, the wealth of their citizens. It's basically a tax that you pay every single day without ever seeing the bill. Now, according to the book, the system we have today wasn't some accident. It was built, piece by piece, over decades. It really got going during World War I, when nations ditched the gold standard so they could print money to pay for the war. Then, in 1933, the U.S. government actually made it illegal for its own citizens to own gold. The final break happened in 1971, when the dollar was totally severed from gold, only to be almost immediately tied to a new source of global power: oil. And this created a really weird moment in the history of money. For the first time ever, a weaker money, that's the government-issued fiat currency, pushed out a harder money, like gold. And why? Well, the reason was pretty simple. It was faster. For our modern, fast-paced global economy, we basically traded the long-term, stable value of gold for the short-term convenience of digital cash. The book argues that this has created a kind of two-tiered world. At the top, you've got a pretty small group. Think big corporations, international banks, the global elite, and they operate in stable currencies, like the US dollar. And then there's pretty much everyone else, who are stuck using one of the 160 or so weaker national currencies that are basically designed to lose value over time. And you can see this two-tiered system reinforced by huge global institutions like the IMF. Look at this. When a developing nation needs a loan, it's often forced to devalue its own currency, cut social spending, sell off its assets. But when a developed nation hits a crisis, they are almost never asked to take that same bitter medicine. The book argues this is a feature, not a bug, and it traps poorer countries in a never-ending cycle of debt. So what does this actually feel like for just a regular person? Well, the book uses this great analogy. It's like you work hard all day to fill up a bag with ice cubes, only to realize the bag itself is full of holes. Your work, your savings, your effort, it's just constantly, slowly melting away no matter what you do. And in an environment like that, the book says, the system encourages debt and risky speculation instead of patient saving. It creates these relentless boom and bust cycles. And when the bust inevitably comes, like it did in 2008, who gets the bailouts? The cheap credit flows to the largest institutions, the ones closest to that money printer, while regular people get left behind. It just concentrates wealth more and more at the very top. Okay, so after painting that pretty bleak picture of broken money, the book shifts gears. It starts to explore a potential solution. And it frames Bitcoin not as some get-rich-quick lottery ticket, but as a very specific technological answer to the flaws that it just laid out. The very first property the book highlights is scarcity. Look at this. Gold's supply goes up by about 1.5% a year. The U.S. money supply? It's grown by an average of 7% a year. Bitcoin, on the other hand, is currently inflating at less than 2%. And that number is hard-coded to get smaller and smaller over time, all the way down to 0. And that predictable scarcity leads us to this number: 21 million. That's it. Full stop. The argument is that for the first time in human history, we have a monetary asset with a totally fixed, unchangeable supply. No government, no central bank, no CEO can ever wake up one day and decide to just make more. That power of seigniorage, the power to print, is taken completely out of human hands. But you might be wondering, how is that supply cap actually enforced? What stops somebody from just changing the code? Well, the book says it comes down to a really important technical detail called proof of work. To create new Bitcoin, miners have to compete. And to compete, they have to spend real-world resources, mainly energy. This is very different from another system you hear about, proof of stake, where the richest coin holders get to make the most new coins. A system the book claims just recreates the old model of the rich getting richer. So you take all these features and you put them together. And what you get is a system with properties that seem to directly counter the flaws of traditional money. You can hold it yourself, no bank needed. You can take it with you anywhere on Earth. And maybe most importantly, no single person or group can freeze your account or block you from using it. It's a direct answer to that very first question we asked. With this, you control the money. Of course, it is not that simple. Not by a long shot. And to be fair, the book is very, very clear about the massive risks and roadblocks that stand in the way. This is no guaranteed success story. And it's absolutely crucial that we understand where it could all go wrong. The book flags 4 huge risks. First, you've got market dilution. There are thousands of other cryptocurrencies out there, all competing for attention. Second, the potential for a catastrophic software bug in the code itself. Third, and this is a big one, the threat of government crackdowns and hostile laws. And finally, there's the risk of a direct computational attack on the network itself. And that point about government bans, it brings up a really interesting question. The countries that are most likely to ban something like Bitcoin are often the ones with the most oppressive, broken financial systems. So if they ban it, is that a sign that the tool has failed? Or is it maybe a sign of just how desperately the people living there actually need it? This brings us right to the conclusion of the book's entire argument. After weighing the deep, systemic problems of the world we live in against the potential and the very real risks of a new one, it basically presents each of us with a fundamental choice about the future of our own wallets. As the book frames it, there are 2 paths forward. Path 1 is the status quo. You stick with the current system, you accept that slow, steady drain of inflation, and you put your trust in those big, centralized institutions. Path 2 is to explore the alternative. You accept wild, stomach-churning volatility, and you take on the huge responsibility of being your own bank, all for a shot at real, genuine financial freedom. And in the end, the book leaves us with this final thought. Technology has already completely remade communication, media, shopping, travel, everything. Money is one of the last great centralized systems left over from the 20th century. So the final question really isn't if technology is going to reshape money, it's how and what role each of us will choose to play when it does. Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.